I caught my husband watching secret videos of me. The footage was more than just intimate. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I used to think my husband loved me too much. That sounds strange, I know. But it's true. Marcus was attentive in ways that made other women jealous. He always knew when I was upset before I said anything. He remembered every detail of my day. He could finish my sentences, anticipate my needs, understand my moods with uncanny precision. I thought it was devotion. I thought I was lucky. I was wrong about everything. My name is Elna, and I've been married to Marcus for 6 years. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party, and he pursued me with an intensity that felt romantic at the time. Within 3 months, we were engaged. Within 6, we were married and moving into the house he'd bought for us in the suburbs. The house was beautiful. A craftsman-style home with hardwood floors, large windows, and a garden I'd always dreamed of tending. Marcus had renovated it himself before we moved in, spending months getting every detail perfect. He was so proud when he showed me around on our first day as a married couple. "I want you to feel safe here," he'd said, holding my hand as we walked through each room. "I want this to be our sanctuary." And it was. For years it was. Marcus worked in IT security, which explained his obsession with technology. Our house had the latest smart home features: automated lights, a sophisticated alarm system, temperature controls, even smart locks on every door. He managed everything from his phone, showing me proudly how secure we were. "No one can get in without us knowing," he'd say. "You're completely protected." I appreciated it. The world felt dangerous sometimes, and knowing Marcus was so careful about our safety made me feel cherished. When he'd text me asking where I was, I thought it was sweet. When he'd mentioned something I'd told my sister on the phone, I assumed I must have mentioned it to him too and forgotten. When he knew my schedule better than I did, I thought he was just paying attention. I never questioned it. Why would I? Marcus was my husband, my partner, my protector. He loved me. He told me so every day in a dozen different ways. He brought me coffee in the morning, made sure my car was always serviced, handled all the complicated technology stuff I found frustrating. He made my life easier. That's what I told myself. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way he always wanted my phone password in case of emergencies. How he insisted on handling all the computer maintenance. The strange way he'd react when I mentioned going somewhere without telling him first. That flash of something in his eyes before he'd smile and say he just worried about me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the night everything changed. It was a Thursday in late September. Marcus had been acting strange all week, more distracted than usual, spending even longer hours in his home office. He'd installed a lock on that door about a year ago, saying he needed privacy for work calls with clients. I'd never questioned it. That Thursday, he got called into work for an emergency at around 11 p.m. Some server crisis that required him physically on site. He left in a hurry, kissing me goodbye and telling me not to wait up. "I'll probably be there until morning," he said. "Get some rest." I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Something felt off, though I couldn't articulate what. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and went downstairs to make tea. That's when I noticed Marcus's office door was slightly ajar. He must have forgotten to pull it completely closed in his rush. I should have just closed it and gone back to bed. But I didn't. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was neat as always, everything in its place. His desk held 2 large monitors, a high-end laptop, and various electronics I couldn't identify. I'd been in this room plenty of times, but always briefly, never really looking around. Tonight, I looked. The laptop was closed but not powered down. The light was still on. Without really thinking about what I was doing, I opened it. The screen came to life immediately. No password screen. He must have disabled it before leaving, planning to come right back. I felt a flutter of guilt, like I was snooping, but I pushed it down. We were married. We didn't have secrets. The screen showed his desktop, organized with dozens of folders. Most had normal names, work projects, finances, house documents. But one folder in the corner caught my eye. It was labeled with just a date. September 2019. The month and year we'd moved into this house. I clicked on it. Inside were more folders, each labeled with a room name: master bedroom, kitchen, living room, bathroom, garden, guest room, office. My stomach tightened. I clicked on living room, video files, hundreds of them, each with a date and timestamp. I clicked on the most recent one, from yesterday. The video player opened, and I saw our living room. The angle was from above, near the ceiling, pointing down at the couch. The timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. Yesterday afternoon? I watched myself walk into frame, holding my phone and a cup of tea. I sat on the couch, tucked my feet under me, and started scrolling through my phone. After a few minutes, my phone rang. I answered it. "Hey, Jen." My voice came through clearly on the video. "Yeah, I have a few minutes. What's up?" I watched myself have a 15-minute conversation with my sister about her marriage problems. The audio was crystal clear, every word captured perfectly. I closed the video with shaking hands and opened another one. This was from the kitchen 3 days ago. I was making dinner, humming to myself, occasionally checking my phone. At one point, I started dancing a little to music only I could hear, doing stupid moves that made me laugh. It was me, alone, thinking I was unobserved, thinking I was private. But I wasn't alone. Marcus had been watching. With mounting dread, I clicked on the master bedroom folder. The number of files made my breath catch, thousands of them, going back years. I clicked on one at random. The angle was from the corner of the room, showing our entire bed. The timestamp was 2 years ago. I watched Marcus and me having sex, the camera capturing every detail with horrifying clarity. I'd never agreed to this. We'd never discussed it. I hadn't known those cameras existed. I opened another file. Me getting dressed. Another. Me crying on the bed after a fight with my mother. Another. Me sleeping, just lying there unconscious while the camera recorded for hours. Every private moment. Every vulnerable second. All captured, filed, stored. I felt like I was going to be sick, but I couldn't stop looking. I went through the other folders with mechanical precision, needing to know the full extent of it. Bathroom. Me showering, using the toilet, standing naked in front of the mirror, examining my body critically. Kitchen. Me eating alone, cooking, talking on the phone. Garden. Me reading, weeding, lying in the sun. Every room in our house had a camera. Every space I thought was mine had been compromised. But it wasn't just video. In a subfolder labeled Audio Only, I found recordings of my phone calls. All of them. Years of conversations with my sister, my mother, my friends, captured and stored. I clicked on one from last month, a call with my therapist. My therapist. He'd recorded my therapy sessions. I sat back in the chair, my whole body trembling. How was this possible? How had he done this without me knowing? And more importantly, why? That's when I noticed another folder on the desktop. This one was labeled Archive. I opened it. Inside were more folders, but these weren't labeled with room names. They had people's names. Women's names I didn't recognize. Jessica M., Amanda R., Catherine L. 7 names in total. With dread pooling in my stomach, I clicked on Jessica M. The folder structure was identical to mine. Bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, living room. I opened a video file at random. A woman I'd never seen before, maybe late 20s, getting dressed in a bedroom I didn't recognize. She was humming to herself, unaware she was being filmed. I checked the date. 5 years ago, 2 years before I'd even met Marcus. I opened Amanda R's folder. Another woman, another house, another collection of secretly recorded footage. Some of the videos were intimate. Some showed her just living her life, reading, cooking, sleeping, all recorded without her knowledge. I went through all 7 folders. 7 women. 7 complete surveillance operations. The dates ranged from 8 years ago to as recent as 3 months ago. Marcus wasn't just watching me, he was watching multiple women. Maybe he'd been doing this for years. Maybe he'd never stopped, even after we got married. I felt cold all over, like my blood had turned to ice. Who was my husband? What was he doing with all this footage? I kept searching through his files, driven by a horrified need to understand. That's when I found the folder labeled Distributed. Inside were export logs, showing video files being uploaded to various servers. IP addresses, timestamps, file sizes. Some uploads were recent, from this week. I recognized some of the file names. They were videos of me. He was sharing them, putting them somewhere online. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on another folder. Clients. It was an encrypted messaging log, but Marcus had apparently been careless or arrogant enough to leave it unlocked. I scrolled through conversations that made my skin crawl. New footage from Elena's shower. Premium quality, $500 for the set. Yes, I can get audio of her therapy sessions. Will take a few days. $1,000. The bedroom content is exclusive. No one else has access. $2,000 for the compilation. He was selling videos of me, of us, of our most intimate moments. I wanted to scream, to throw up, to smash everything in the office, but I forced myself to stay calm, to keep looking. I needed to understand everything before I decided what to do. Another folder. Insurance. Inside were videos I didn't understand at first. They showed Marcus with various women, including some from the archive folders. But these weren't just surveillance footage. These were recordings of Marcus himself, installing cameras, accessing computers, setting up equipment. In one video, he was in a house I didn't recognize, drilling a tiny camera into the ceiling of a bedroom. In another, he was sitting at a computer, watching a live feed of a woman who clearly had no idea she was being observed. His face was clearly visible. The dates, times, and locations were all documented. It took me a moment to understand. These were insurance files, evidence that could implicate him if something went wrong. But why would he keep this? Why risk having proof of his crimes? Then I understood. Leverage. If any of the women discovered what he'd done, if anyone tried to report him, he could threaten to release even more footage. Or maybe these files were his security blanket, his way of maintaining control over his own operation. I found one more folder before Marcus came home. It was labeled Future Projects and contained dossiers on 5 more women. Photos, addresses, work schedules, social media profiles. He'd been researching them, planning his next targets. One of the profiles was my coworker, Rachel. Another was my sister, Jen. That's when I heard the garage door opening. Marcus was home. I closed everything frantically, trying to remember exactly how his desktop had looked. I shut the laptop and ran out of the office, pulling the door to the same position I'd found it. I made it to the stairs just as I heard his key in the lock. "Elena," he called out. "You still awake?" I tried to steady my breathing. "Yeah, I came down for water. Couldn't sleep." He appeared in the hallway, looking tired but normal. Same Marcus I'd kissed goodbye 3 hours ago. Same face I'd loved for 6 years. But now, when I looked at him, all I could see was the man drilling cameras into ceilings, selling footage of his wife, planning to surveil my sister. "How was the emergency?" I asked, my voice somehow calm. "Annoying. False alarm, mostly. But I'm beat." He came over and kissed my forehead. "Let's go to bed." I let him lead me upstairs, let him wrap his arms around me in bed, let him fall asleep with his hand on my waist. And I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, knowing that somewhere up there was a camera capturing this moment, capturing my fear, my disgust, my betrayal. I didn't sleep at all that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those folders, those videos, those women who had no idea they'd been violated. I thought about all the times Marcus had touched me, knowing he had footage of every intimate moment we'd shared. I thought about him selling videos of me to strangers, commodifying my body, my privacy, my trust. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. I wasn't going to cry or scream or give him any warning that I knew. Because if I did, he'd destroy the evidence. He'd claim I was crazy, imagining things. Or worse, he'd use those videos to hurt me, to hurt the other women, to maintain his control. No, I was going to be smarter than that. Over the next few days, I played the perfect wife. I smiled at Marcus, made his coffee, asked about his work. I was careful not to change anything about my behavior. He couldn't suspect that I knew. But every moment he was out of the house, I was in his office, learning everything I could. I discovered his system was even more sophisticated than I'd initially realized. He had remote access to all the cameras, could watch from his phone wherever he was. He'd hacked my phone, my laptop, everything. He knew my passwords, read my emails, tracked my location constantly. Every time I'd thought I had privacy in our marriage, I'd been wrong. He'd been watching always, seeing everything, controlling every aspect of my life without me knowing. I found his client list, dozens of people paying for access to surveillance footage. I found evidence that he'd been doing this professionally for years, starting long before we met. I found chat logs where he discussed techniques with other people who did the same thing, a whole underground network of people violating others' privacy for profit. And I copied everything. Every file, every video, every message, every piece of evidence. I used old thumb drives I found in the house, hiding them in places Marcus would never look. On day 5 of my investigation, I discovered something that changed everything. A video file labeled Emergency Protocol. I opened it, and there was Marcus, sitting in his office, looking directly at the camera. If you're watching this, Elena, it means you've figured it out. I want you to know that I planned for this possibility. Right now, as you watch this, the system has detected the unauthorized access and is preparing a failsafe. My blood ran cold. His recorded voice continued, calm and matter-of-fact. All the footage I have of you, of us, has been uploaded to a dead man's switch. If I don't check in every 48 hours, it gets automatically released to everyone in your contact list. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, everyone will see everything. I felt the walls closing in. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to close this computer, put everything back the way you found it, and you're never going to speak about this again. We'll continue our life together, and you'll never access my office or my files again. If you do, if you tell anyone, if you go to the police, everyone you know will see what I've recorded. Do you understand? The video ended. He'd known. He'd planned for the possibility that I might discover his secret, and he'd built in a contingency to ensure I could never expose him without destroying myself in the process. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, feeling the trap closing around me. Then I noticed something. The video file had a date stamp 2 years ago, and the emergency protocol folder showed it had been accessed once, when it was created, but the system logs showed no recent triggers. The threat was real, but he didn't know I'd found it yet. The dead man's switch hadn't been activated by my snooping. His security system wasn't as sophisticated as he'd made it seem in the video. He was bluffing, at least partially. Or maybe he just hadn't checked his logs yet. I had a choice to make. I could do what he demanded, live in silence, let him continue violating me and planning to violate my sister and God knows how many others. Or I could fight back, knowing that he might follow through on his threat. I thought about all those other women in his files. Had they found out too? Had he threatened them the same way? Is that why there was no record of anyone reporting him? No evidence that he'd ever faced consequences? I couldn't let it continue. Not for me, and not for the women he was planning to target next. So I made a plan of my own. First, I needed to understand his dead man's switch. I spent another 2 days exploring his system when he was at work, tracing the code, finding the servers where he'd stored the backup files. It was complex, but not as impenetrable as he'd implied. And there was a weakness. The system required his active confirmation every 48 hours, but it wasn't automated to the point where I couldn't interfere. If I could access his phone and laptop simultaneously, if I could override the verification protocol, I could disable the entire system before the files were released. Second, I needed allies. I couldn't go to the police without evidence that would stick, and I couldn't risk him finding out before I'd secured everything. So I did something I'd never done before. I contacted one of the women from his archive files. I found Jessica M. through social media. She was living 2 states away now, married with 2 kids. I created a fake email account and sent her a carefully worded message. I think we've both been victims of the same person. I have evidence. Can we talk? She responded within hours. We arranged a video call, and I showed her some of the footage Marcus had collected of her, along with the sales records showing he'd been selling it online. She broke down crying, then got angry. I thought I was going crazy, she said, her voice shaking. I kept feeling like someone was watching me, but I could never find anything. And when I told people, they thought I was paranoid. He did this to me for years. I'm going to stop him, I told her, but I need your help. Over the next week, I contacted 3 more women from Marcus's archive. All of them had similar stories, feeling watched, finding nothing, eventually dismissing their instincts. One had actually gone to the police, but without evidence, nothing had happened. Marcus had been careful to remove all the cameras before there could be a search. Together, we built a case. Each woman documented what had happened to them. I provided the evidence from Marcus's files, the footage, the sales records, the chat logs with his network of clients and fellow criminals. But we still had the problem of the dead man's switch. If Marcus felt threatened, he'd release everything before we could stop him. That's where my plan got risky. I decided to trigger his surveillance paranoia against him. Over the next few days, I started doing strange things when I was alone in the house. I'd look directly at where I knew cameras were hidden and smile. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to be unsettling. I'd pause in the middle of rooms and stare at spots where I knew he'd installed equipment. I changed my passwords to phrases like, I know what you did, and watching you too. I left windows open on my laptop, showing research about surveillance systems and how to disable them, always closing them just before he came home, but leaving them in the browser history where he'd find them if he checked. I wanted him nervous. I wanted him wondering if I knew, if someone else knew, if his security had been compromised. Marcus started acting differently within 3 days. He was jumpier, more suspicious, checking his phone constantly. He kept going into his office and locking the door for hours. He stopped sleeping well, I could tell. Everything okay? I'd ask innocently. Fine, just work stress. But he wasn't fine. He was unraveling, wondering if his carefully constructed system of control was failing. That's when I made my real move. I hired a private investigator, a woman who specialized in electronic surveillance and cyber crimes. Her name was Diana, and she'd dealt with cases like this before. I gave her everything I'd copied from Marcus's computer, and she helped me understand the full scope of his operation. Your husband is part of a network, she explained. There are dozens of people doing this, sharing techniques, sometimes even trading footage. It's a black market for voyeuristic content. Can we stop it? We can stop him. The network is harder, but taking down one node will help. Diana worked with the women I'd contacted and a lawyer who specialized in privacy violations. Together, we built a case that would not only put Marcus in prison, but also provide evidence for law enforcement to go after his clients and the broader network. But we still needed to neutralize the dead man's switch. Diana found a solution. She could create a system override, but it required simultaneous access to both Marcus's phone and his laptop. I'd have to get both devices away from him at the same time, which meant I needed him distracted and off guard. I planned for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. It came on a Saturday when Marcus was planning to play golf with his colleagues. He'd leave his laptop at home, I knew, because he always did on weekends. That morning, I put my plan into motion. "I'm making a big breakfast," I told him. "Why don't you shower first? Take your time, relax before your game." He agreed, heading upstairs. The moment I heard the water running, I grabbed his phone from the kitchen counter where he'd left it. His password was a pattern I'd memorized from watching him over the years. I unlocked it and ran the override program Diana had given me. While that was running, I rushed to his office. The laptop was closed but not locked. I opened it and plugged in the USB drive with Diana's software. The bathroom water was still running. I had maybe 5 more minutes. Both programs were designed to work simultaneously, disabling his dead man's switch while I uploaded all his files to a secure server Diana controlled. The progress bars moved agonizingly slowly. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The upload was at 87%. The water shut off upstairs. 94%. I heard Marcus moving around in the bathroom. 98%. His footsteps on the stairs. 100%. Complete. I ejected the USB drive and closed the laptop just as Marcus walked in. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "Looking for tape. I'm wrapping that birthday gift for your mom. Thought you might have some in your desk." "I don't." He watched me carefully. "I usually keep the door locked." It was open. I smiled at him, handing him his phone that I'd casually palmed. "You left this downstairs." He took it, checking it immediately, but the override had been designed to leave no trace. Everything would look normal to him. "Thanks." He was still watching me with that intense focus, trying to determine if something was wrong. "Have fun golfing," I said, kissing his cheek and walking out of the office. He stood there for a moment longer. I could feel his eyes on my back, but eventually he left for his game. The moment his car was out of the driveway, I called Diana. "It's done. The switch is disabled." "Completely. And I've secured all the files. He can't delete them remotely, and he can't release anything. You're safe." Now came the final part of my plan. I called the police. I provided them with everything: the surveillance footage, the sales records, the evidence of the network, the testimonies from the other women. I gave them Diana's contact information for the technical details. They arrived within an hour. 2 detectives, a woman named Sarah and a man named Tom, both from the cyber crimes unit. I showed them the office, explained the system, provided access to all of Marcus's files through the secure server Diana had set up. "This is extensive," Detective Sarah said, scrolling through the evidence on her tablet. "This isn't just voyeurism. This is organized criminal activity. Trafficking in intimate images, hacking, stalking, possibly blackmail." "There are other women," I told her. "He has dossiers on future targets, including my sister." They documented everything, took the computers as evidence, found the hidden cameras throughout the house. There were 17 in total, including 2 in the bathroom I'd used every day for 6 years. "We'll need you to come to the station for a formal statement," Detective Tom said, "and we'll be arresting your husband when he returns." "I won't be here when that happens," I told them. "I've made arrangements to stay somewhere else." I'd already packed a bag, already arranged to stay with my sister. I wasn't going to be here when Marcus came home to find his world crashing down. But before I left, I did one last thing. I went into his office with one of the cameras the police had removed. I set it up on his desk, pointed at his chair. Then I sat down in that chair and recorded a message. "Hello, Marcus. If you're watching this, it means the police have your laptop and you're trying to access your system remotely. You can't. I've disabled everything. Your cameras, your dead man switch, your whole surveillance network. It's over." I paused, looking directly into the camera, the way he'd looked into all those hidden cameras while violating my privacy. You've been watching me for 6 years without my knowledge or consent. You sold intimate footage of me to strangers. You violated not just my privacy, but my autonomy, my sense of safety, my ability to trust. You made me a prisoner in my own home, and I didn't even know it. My voice stayed calm, cold. You thought you were smart, that you'd planned for every contingency. You thought the threat of releasing those videos would keep me silent. But you underestimated me. You underestimated all of us, all the women whose lives you've invaded. I leaned closer to the camera. I want you to know what it feels like to be watched, to have no privacy, no control. This camera will record everything that happens in this office when you come home. The police will see it. The prosecutors will see it. Everyone will watch you realize that you've lost everything. I stood up. You tried to make me afraid. Instead, you made me strong. Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you enjoy being the one under surveillance for once. I left the camera recording, walked out of that office, out of that house, and I never went back. Marcus was arrested that evening when he returned from golf. The police were waiting. According to Detective Sarah, who kept me updated, he tried to bluff at first, claiming he didn't know what they were talking about. But when they showed him the evidence, when he realized the extent of what they had, he broke down. He tried to make a deal, offering information about the network he was part of in exchange for a lighter sentence. It didn't help much. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony from 7 different women he'd victimized over nearly a decade. The sales records. The footage of him installing cameras and accessing computer systems without authorization. He was charged with multiple counts of voyeurism, unauthorized surveillance, distribution of intimate images without consent, computer fraud, and a dozen other charges I don't even fully understand. His lawyer tried to argue that he had an addiction, a compulsion, that he needed treatment, not punishment. The judge wasn't sympathetic, neither was I. The trial took 8 months. I had to testify, to sit in a courtroom while they showed edited versions of the footage he'd recorded, while lawyers asked invasive questions about my most private moments. It was horrible, humiliating in ways I can't fully express. But I did it. We all did it. All the women he'd violated. We stood up in court and told our stories, and we watched as Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in prison. 12 years for 6 years of violating me. For 8 years of violating Jessica. For ruining the sense of security and privacy of 7 women whose only mistake was being targeted by a predator with technical skills. It didn't feel like enough. It still doesn't. But it was something. The case made news, not because of Marcus specifically, but because it exposed the broader network he was part of. Law enforcement agencies in multiple states coordinated raids, arresting dozens of people involved in similar surveillance operations. Some of Marcus's clients were prosecuted. The whole network he'd been part of was disrupted. I'd like to say it was completely destroyed, but I'm not naive. There are probably others out there, still violating people's privacy, still watching and recording and selling footage of unsuspecting victims. But at least this network was broken. As for me, I moved to a new city. I sold the house, couldn't stand to be in it another moment. I got a new job, started over in ways that felt both liberating and exhausting. I was in therapy twice a week for the first year, working through the violation, the betrayal, the trauma of learning that my entire marriage had been built on surveillance and control. I had to relearn what privacy meant, what safety felt like. For months, I was paranoid about cameras everywhere, checking hotel rooms and bathrooms obsessively. I covered laptop cameras with tape, kept my phone in another room when I slept, was suspicious of every electronic device. It's been 3 years now since that night I opened Marcus's laptop. I'm better, mostly. I can be in a room without checking for cameras. I can have conversations without wondering if someone is listening. I can be intimate with someone without that flash of panic that I'm being recorded. Mostly. There are still hard days. Days when I remember how violated I felt, how stupid I felt for not noticing, how angry I am that someone I loved could do that to me. Days when I wonder what he did with all those recordings of me, How many strangers have seen my most private moments? Whether that footage is still out there, somewhere in the dark corners of the internet. But I survived. I fought back. And I made sure Marcus faced consequences for what he did. Sometimes people ask me how I didn't notice the cameras, how I could have lived with someone for 6 years without realizing what he was. I used to feel ashamed of those questions, like I should have known, should have been smarter. Now I understand that predators like Marcus count on that shame. They count on victims blaming themselves, on the natural human tendency to trust the people we love. He was careful, sophisticated, practiced. He'd been doing this for years before I ever met him. It wasn't my fault that he chose to violate me. It was his choice, his crime, his moral failing. I've connected with some of the other women from Marcus's files. We have a group chat now, a support network. We share resources about digital security, about recognizing signs of surveillance, about healing from this particular kind of violation. We're talking about starting a nonprofit to help other victims of unauthorized surveillance. Because here's what I learned. This happens more than people realize. The technology to spy on people is cheaper and more accessible than ever. Hidden cameras are tiny, easy to install, difficult to detect. And there are people out there who will use that technology to violate others, either for profit or for some twisted sense of control. If you ever have that feeling, that sense that something is wrong, that you're being watched even though you can't see anyone, trust yourself. Check for cameras. Look for small holes in walls, unusual angles in smoke detectors, or clocks, or picture frames. Trust your instincts, and if you find something, document it. Take photos, preserve evidence, and get help. There are people who specialize in this, investigators and lawyers who understand electronic surveillance. You're not alone, and you're not crazy. I got a letter from Marcus about 6 months ago. It was forwarded through my lawyer, because he doesn't have my address. In it, he apologized, said he understood what he'd done was wrong, claimed he was getting treatment in prison, and wanted me to know he was sorry. I burned it without finishing it. I don't care about his apologies. I don't care about his explanations or his treatment or his remorse. He had 6 years to be sorry, 6 years to stop, 6 years to respect my humanity and my right to privacy. He chose to violate me instead. The only thing I care about now is that he can't hurt anyone else. That he's in a place where his every move is watched and recorded and controlled, the way he watched and recorded and controlled me. There's a certain poetic justice in that. I'm building a new life now, one where I control my own narrative, my own privacy, my own sense of safety. It's not easy. Some days I still feel like that woman staring at hidden camera footage of herself, realizing that everything she thought was private had been exposed. But I'm healing. I'm stronger than Marcus ever expected me to be. I'm free of his surveillance, his control, his presence in my life. And every day, I'm reclaiming what he tried to take from me, my privacy, my autonomy, my peace. I caught my husband watching secret videos of me. The footage was more than just intimate. It was evidence of years of systematic violation. And instead of letting that destroy me, I used it to destroy his ability to hurt anyone else. I didn't just escape his surveillance. I dismantled it. And that, in the end, is my revenge.